Why Glover Teixeira will get his belt back. With UFC 283 right around the corner, Glover Teixeira has another chance to regain his title in a matchup that's somewhat favorable to him, at least in my opinion. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Glover Teixeira is coming off a very impressive performance against Yuri Prochazka. Now, unfortunately for Glover, he ended up losing that matchup via submission, but he did look phenomenal in that fight. And if Glover was able to survive that 5th round, he most likely would have won a decision. But after that significant injury that Yuri faced, and after he was forced to vacate the title, Glover is now getting another title shot, and this time it's going to be against Jamahal Hill. Now, what Glover has been able to do, especially over the past couple years, has been very inspiring to watch. And the fact that he was able to beat Jan Blachowicz to get the title the first time was extremely impressive and really inspiring overall. And the fact that he's getting another shot at the title, and in my opinion, I do think this is a favorable matchup for him, is just incredible for his story. But before we get into this specific matchup, let's look at Glover's game and see what he does well out there. So in terms of his stand-up, Glover actually has very good boxing ability. He does a really nice job at throwing out that jab, he has a really nice uppercut, hook, cross, can switch stances but mostly stays in the orthodox stance, also has the ability to throw kicks but he rarely throws them. On the feet, it was believed that Glover didn't have the best chin due to some previous performances, but after that performance he had against Yuri, he actually proved that he has a pretty good chin, in my opinion at least. Now, one thing that I will say is your chin doesn't get better with time, so the fact that he did just go through a war with Yuri Prochazka could certainly affect his chin, and the fact that he only has gotten older since that last fight could also have an effect on it. But at least in that Yuri fight, he did prove to have a pretty good chin. But overall, the main ability that Glover has on the feet is his power. He certainly has a lot of boxing ability, but mostly what he does well out there is throw those power shots. But now moving on to the ground, Glover is extremely good and probably the best grappler in the division. On the ground, Glover has tremendous jiu-jitsu. He does a really nice job at not only finding the submission, but also finding the position. For the most part, besides that Yuri fight, he always stays patient and always seems to be one step ahead of his opponent on the ground. Glover has a really nice rear naked choke, armbar, leg lock. He basically has any submission imaginable, but he also does a great job at throwing those ground and pound shots and getting finishes that way as well. So overall, I do think Glover is a very well balanced fighter, both on the feet, but also on the ground more specifically. But now, let's move on to Jamahal Hill and see what he does well out there. So Jamahal Hill is known as a striker. He's a guy who on the feet does have a lot of ability and is very diverse, but mostly what he's known for is that power. When you look at some of Jamal's fights and you see the way he knocks out some of these guys, it's honestly remarkable. But starting on the feet, Jamahal has a really nice ability to throw that jab, throw that left straight, hooks, uppercuts, crosses, can certainly switch stances whenever he wants. He has the ability to throw kicks, but once again, similar to Glover Teixeira, he does rely on his boxing a lot out there. Now, in terms of his chin, I would say he has a good chin out there. He has shown the ability to take some shots cleanly and not get all that affected from it. Now, Glover does throw bombs, so it would be interesting to see how he would be able to take those shots from Glover Teixeira. But overall, I would say he has a pretty good chin. And on the feet, although Glover is very skilled, I would say Jamahal is a little bit more diverse. Now, on the ground, this is certainly an area that Jamahal isn't known for. He's mostly known for being a striker out there. But on the ground, I would say he has some ability, but in comparison to Glover Teixeira, it's not going to be close. So certainly for Jamahal, he needs to keep the fight on the feet at all times in order for him to have the best chance to win this matchup. But to be fair, that was the exact thought process I had going into the Yuri Prochazka fight. Yuri needed to keep the fight on the feet to win, and he did actually end up getting the submission on the ground, so crazier things have happened. But although Yuri isn't as good of a grappler as Glover Teixeira, he is certainly a better grappler than Jamahal Hill, at least in my opinion. But now the question is, what do I think about this fight? Let's get into my prediction. So I certainly think this is a very interesting fight. This is a matchup that I wasn't expecting to be made. But with that being said, I do think there are paths to victory for both of these guys. In order for Glover Teixeira to win this matchup, he is probably going to need to take the fight to the ground. Now, he does have a lot of ability in the stand-up, and I do think he has and will have a lot of success against Jamahal, but overall, if he wants to get the victory either by decision or by submission, I do think he needs to get the fight to the ground. And for Jamahal Hill, I think the path is pretty obvious. He needs to keep the fight on the feet, and he's most likely going gonna need to get a knockout. Now, it is possible that he pieces up Glover Teixeira for 5 rounds, but I will say in his last matchup against Thiago Santos, he did look very gassed later on into that fight, although he did get a late TKO, which certainly is a positive for his gas tank going forward. But in my opinion, at least in this matchup, I do think he's most likely going to need to get a finish by TKO to win this matchup. But now, let's get into my prediction, what I think will actually happen in this matchup. Now, while I do think this is a very interesting matchup, and I do think there are paths to victory for both of these guys, which I did mention before, my official prediction for this matchup would be a 3rd round submission for Glover Teixeira. Now, I do think early on, Jamal's going to have a lot of success, and especially in the 1st round, I do think he will win that round. But as the rounds do progress, and as Glover shoots for more takedowns and successfully gets them, he's going to eventually tire out Jamahal Hill significantly. And I see Glover having Jamal on the ground for the most part of the 2nd round, although he won't find the finish, at least I don't think he will. I do think he's going to tire him out and win the round overall. And then with Jamal being that tired in the 3rd round, I think Glover's going to take him down again and find the submission in that 3rd round. Now, I could be entirely wrong. Maybe Glover's able to get the win by decision, which I also do think is a legitimate possibility. Maybe Jamal's able to get the victory by TKO, which I also think is a possibility. Who knows how Glover's chin's going to hold up after that war he just went through and after the age that he's at. But at this point, I do think the most likely scenario in this matchup would be Glover Teixeira by submission. And I'm even going a step further, giving the round I think it's going to happen in the 3rd round. But one thing I will say is I am extremely excited to see this matchup. If Jamahal Hill is somehow able to pull this off, that would be a crazy rise for him. He's a guy who came up through the Dana White Contender Series, and to get a title shot decently early on into his career and to get a victory in that matchup would be incredible for him going forward. And I do think he is a very legitimate talent, and I do think with time he's only going to get better. But as I said, for this matchup, my official prediction would be Glover Teixeira via submission. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening in this matchup. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Glover Teixeira is going to win this matchup, or do you think Jamahal Hill will? And in what method do you think they'll win in? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.